Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Gluchowski. I'm CEO of MetaMask, the company that had zkSync protocol. How many of you know zkSync? Oh, cool. So like zkSync, if you know, it's a protocol focused on, we have a mission of advancing freedom for the world by scaling blockchains and bringing mass adoption to Ethereum specifically. And a core part of mass adoption is frictionless user experience. And this is extremely important. So zkSync is currently the only L2 that natively implements account abstraction. Roughly based on AP 457, but natively means it's available to all accounts, to not just to smart wallets that are specifically designed for working with the providers, but like from any MetaMask wallet, any Ethereum wallet can just execute transactions, paying fees in any token, or gasless, or whatever.
Cool. Hi there, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm a senior product manager at MetaMask. I help to lead what's called our accounts team. We do a lot of things, but recently mainly been focused on how we can actually bring account abstraction to MetaMask. So yeah, excited to be here today. Thanks for coming.
Hi everyone, my name is Anton Bukov. I am co-founder of 1inch. That's it. Thank you.
So my introduction might be a bit longer than yours, but I'll try to be short. I'm Julien, one of the 3 co-founders at Argent. So for those of you who don't know us, we've been building smart contract-based wallets since 2018. So basically doing account abstraction before it was cool. And we pioneered some ideas such as social recovery, sponsor transaction, and all these great things that we are all discussing now. We've been building that for 5 years. And so we're, of course, extremely excited to see the entire ecosystem moving in that direction.
Hi, I'm Hsuan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Blocto. And I wish I could just leave it like that as Anton. But I guess very few of you have heard of Blocto. So we have been a smart contract wallet, account abstraction wallet since 2019. But initially, we focused more on the non-EVM layer ones. So we were the largest wallet on Flow and also pretty big on Aptos. But now we are putting more focus into EVM ecosystem as well. Now that the EVM folks are putting more focus into account abstraction and ERC-437 as well. So yeah, happy to be here.
Cool, awesome. Thanks for the intro. And for everybody that doesn't know me, I'm Francesco. I'm part of the DevRel at MetaMask. And yeah, for everybody that does know me, you know that I'm quite keen on AA and I'm a very advocate on around this topic. But I want to play a little bit the devil advocate tonight. So I start with why user adoption is so low.
User adoption of crypto, user adoption of account abstraction? Or?
Yeah, in general, where our ecosystem, what we need to do, what are the barriers, why we're not there yet?
So we only have an hour, it's going to be short. No, I think one key element from our point of view at Argent has always been user experience. I think we are still very early in this ecosystem, and so we've been used to a certain type of complexity that we've accepted as normal. And at Argent, we've always believed that this was not acceptable, and so that's why we've been, trying to search for a better model to solve these problems, so really enable great user experience, but without compromising on self-custody. Because, of course, you can build great user experience by being a centralized exchange, for example. So for us, it has always been, how can we actually deal with that tension, provide amazing user experience while maintaining self-custody? And account abstraction, I think, is one solution. So I think in summary, I would say, low adoption is probably because the user experience wasn't ready. I think the technology wasn't completely ready either. I mean, it's impossible to onboard a billion users on Ethereum at one. And so that's why people the team of Alex at zkSync, they provided scaling solution. So I think we are really reaching a moment where we have technologies to scale the throughput. We can onboard a lot of users and enable them to have cheap transaction with the same security guarantees as Ethereum. But at the same time, we can scale the self-custody using account abstraction. So I do believe we are at a moment actually where these barriers, this stuff that have prevented more users to joining this space are actually about to disappear. And so looking forward to the next 12 months.
Sure, I go next. That's a zinger to start off with, right? We weren't briefed on any of the questions, by the way, so some of us on the back foot. But anyway, let's start off by, I guess, establishing account abstraction, of course, talking about MetaMask. In terms of why we're so low, so MetaMask has externally owned accounts, which are the ones that can sign transactions. We started off with that because it's an extremely easy way just to get started with a wallet, but it comes with a trade-off, which is, of course, the fact when asked to remember 12 words, and we say write it on a piece of paper. If you lose it, you lose all of your assets. Going back when MetaMask started, that was the only way, really, you could create a scalable wallet to 30 million people. And over the years, there's been multiple proposals to bring account abstraction to Ethereum, probably covering some old ground if you've been to some of these talks before, but let's start off with the basics. But all of those protocol upgrades require time. All the core developers have been focused on proof of stake and scaling. This panel is called 4337, I think is behind us, right? ERC 4337, Ethereum request for comment, brings up a new proposal to actually bring account abstraction to Ethereum using a secondary mempool. Essentially, the smart contracts can submit user operations. zkSync, you're doing it in a completely different way, so love to dive into that a little bit more. But that's super new. That smart contract was only deployed, I think, at ETH Denver 2 to 3 months ago, right? So at the scale of MetaMask, we need things such as bundlers to actually package those transactions together, paymasters as well, and that's quite a fledgling ecosystem. And so we're looking forward to working with those partners who are standing up bundlers and paymasters as that ecosystem develops.
Cool. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, just one thing to add to what's been just said is that we believe that the fees, the transaction costs, are also part of user experience. And if costs are high, obviously you can't expect a lot of users to come. And costs are connected to scalability, so improving scalability improves the costs and thus accessibility of the protocols to retail, like to many people.
Yeah, I can say that I believe zkSync is probably one of a few chains which is the most ready for this thing, mostly because they already have this kind of functionality, but it's kind of have different API currently. They call it paymasters. So I also see kind of issue to onboard existing users to account abstractions because it would make their transactions a little bit more costly. And I'm afraid that not every DApp now, most of DApps now, they are not ready for account abstractions. I mean, they can't offer any specific improvements, like they can bundle multiple actions together. This should be probably handled on wallet side, but could be dApps could handle this. So I'm not sure it's already a solved question who should take care of this.
Maybe just that we are right now into the layer 2 questions. Like, so, I mean, like for zkSync especially, like, so why you guys implemented natively account abstraction on zkSync? Like, what are the real benefits out there, just for the audience to understand?
So if you don't implement account abstraction natively, then you are down to limitations of your base protocol. Like on Ethereum, the EAP 457 was implemented in compatibility with backwards compatibility, which means any transaction can only be initiated by an EOA. There is no way for any other account to actually initiate transaction, and you always have to have ETH to pay for this transaction. Which leads to a necessity to create a network of. So first of all, like, not every account becomes account abstractable. So you have to create special accounts that can work with this kind of infrastructure. And then you have to submit your transaction not natively to the protocol network, the peer-to-peer network, or to sequencers, but to some third parties. Maybe there is a decentralized marketplace for this. Like, I don't know how it currently works, but it definitely creates centralization risks, counterparty risks, for reliability, for MEV, for other things. So like, you create a lot of complexity and you limit your use cases. Like, if a simple thing, like, you can't, like, if you have an EOA, you cannot just execute something because your message sender, if you go through a proxy, will change, and then it's not going to be your account. So you have to have ETH, and you have to pay with this ETH.
Yeah, I think having native account abstraction is very crucial in terms of adoption. Yeah, so it's currently not the case on Ethereum, and like we run into a lot of problems. Like, I believe Argent faced the similar issues as well. So we offer all these kind of like different features like fee subsidization stuff, but people are just sticking to EOA because it's the norm. It's like what everyone is doing, and it is very painful for them to migrate to like a not so mature, not currently still a minority kind of technology. So having an like native account abstraction in an ecosystem, I think it's very crucial, and that is what we also see in other like non-EVM ecosystems as well. Like, so the users are generally like happier, and like what we have tested on like a couple of like on Flow, we can see the like onboarding conversion rate like reach more than 95%, which is like very difficult to reach on Ethereum.
Sure, I'll just build off of this though. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of, zkSync have done it natively, and I think for a long time, MetaMask were waiting for some protocol upgrade to allow account abstraction. That's not going to happen. Look at Dan Finlay's messages on EIP 3074, 5002, but it was just never going to happen, right? ERC 4337 is coming out. It's a more fledgling than, say, native integration on zkSync, but I think the scale that can add to a lot of the L2s. The experience may take a little bit longer to get there, but I don't think it's going to be too far off a native integration. And potentially in the future as well, there can be an actual protocol upgrade to bring ERC 4337 close to Ethereum. We'll see.
Cool. Actually, it's very interesting, this line of talks. I have a little bit more like, I don't know if you guys are aware, but for Argent, like you guys have been like implementing a natively like since what, 2018, right? Like, and you probably are very experienced around like what are the lessons learned. Because I'm asking myself why everybody, is not using Argent, why everybody's not using Argent today, right? And you have tons of like lessons learned here. What did you learn? What are the things that we should know? I mean, yeah.
First of all, why aren't you all using Argent today? That's right, that's a good question. No, more seriously, I think it comes down to being basically a second-class citizen. Because when you're a smart contract wallet, you're basically different than the main model. And as you mentioned, people are building for EOAs. The majority of developers are thinking in terms of EOAs. And there's a few flows that are not working if you're a smart contract wallet. An example, on Ethereum, we are used to basically sign off-chain messages. When we identify to a dApp, sometimes the dApp asks you to sign something, and then we'll verify that signature. And it assumes that you're an EOA, because with an EOA, there's a link between the signer and the identity of the account. On a smart contract, it works differently. A smart contract cannot sign, but the smart contract can have keys that can sign on its behalf. So typically, what you need to do to verify a signature is just call a method on the account, and there's an EIP for that, EIP 1271. The problem is that most developers are not aware of these flows, because again, they think in terms of EOA. And so that means that I think up to now, being a smart contract wallet, being a second-class citizen, meant that we were not compatible with 100% of the dApp. We are compatible with 80, 90, but there's always dApps that are not working. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why the adoption has been a bit slower than we would have liked. And I think a second reason, as Alex mentioned, is also the cost, because of course, being a smart contract wallet, you have logic in your account, which is very important, but that means that transactions are a little bit more expensive. And so I think that's why, now that we are moving to layer 2s, I think this problem will become less and less important, but there's still the problem of the friction. And I think, I love ERC 4337, right? We've been really vocal. I know the team very well. We discuss a lot. And I think it's a great ERC to educate the ecosystem. But actually, our position at Argent was always to say, I think we are all overestimating the complexity to shift the mindset of an entire ecosystem. And I do think it will take a long time for developers, for all the dApp to adapt. So that's why we've been always saying we should have native account abstraction. And there's basically 2 layer 2s that listen, zkSync and Starknet. But I think this is very important. And I know 4337 will help us get there, because it's just the first step along that journey, and I have no doubt that the EVM will have native account abstraction at some point. But the thing is, I think we shouldn't waste time. Layer 2s are an amazing opportunity. We're starting basically from a blank page. It's amazing to keep the learning of the EVM of what has happened on Ethereum, but we should actually also use this learning to say, okay, what are the friction points? What are the things that we should improve? Vitalik was on main stage 2 days ago talking about account abstraction, and he basically said EOA were a mistake. They were always meant to launch Ethereum with a multisig for all users. but then they were pressed to launch Ethereum by the community, and so they basically had to cut down some of the feature. I think that's something that's important to realize. EOAs were basically a mistake on the history of Ethereum. And now that we are launching with layer 2s, we have blank pages, and with many layer 2s are basically making that same mistake, which I think is a bit unfortunate, because, I mean, we need to go fast. The user experience needs to improve, and I think we should really onboard more users. And so having native account abstraction, for me, is very, very important.
I would like to add that I actually use Argent, and I send all of my friends who are from non-crypto to Argent. And the reason is the complexity of handling your private keys, your seed phrases, your the idea of gas, that you have to have some separate token to pay gas. It's very complex. It kills the adoption. Like every step of friction on converting the user diminishes your funnel by like dozens of %. And so, like for all the normies out there who are not familiar, like the simplest thing is just to log in with their email account and be sure that they're not going to be hacked, that like they're not going to forget the seed phrase and so on. But they still have full self-custody of the funds. So I think the Argent is actually leading with like onboarding of non-native crypto users.
Yeah, I mean, ECC is all about developers and builders, right? Like, I'm interested to understand a little bit, like, what are the barriers today for developers? How many developers are in the room first? So we can fine-tune a cool. You see, all about the builders in the room. So how you guys perceive, like, in terms of like developer adoption, developer tooling? I mean, I'm a big advocate on permissionless innovation. So obviously snaps, I'm amazed about what snaps are doing those days. But like, what are the barriers today in terms of like account abstraction tooling? Later on, we will hear also like Pimlico. So those tooling are around. Do we need more tooling for developers? What is your thought on that?
Yeah, I think there are certainly a lot of things missing, like Paymaster. Currently, the standard is not very clear yet, like how you interact with Paymaster, how you ask for a signature, and also like bundler. Like there's still a lot of work to do. But like I think this kind of thing needs the consensus from like the ecosystem, at least the wallet builders. And actually there was a roundtable among like some wallet builders yesterday to talk about like what's beyond 437, like what is currently still missing in 437, and what's like, for example, like 6900, and beyond that, like what are we missing to make account abstraction wallets like seamlessly can be integrated with applications alongside EOAs. Yeah, so definitely a lot of work.
Sure. Yeah, I just bring one thing up, which is one thing that we're really excited about. So everyone's working on security for bundlers. I think is a really important addition to the ERC 4337 ecosystem. We just want to make sure that we're sending user ops to a secure bundler and they're not being tampered with in any way. I'd also say, though, in terms of when it comes to the DApp level, there is a degree of complexity there. You know, we've been playing as well with counterfactual delegations as well, which is essentially a data payload that can be kept off-chain in a gasless way and then invoked later on-chain. But that does require certain dApps to actually accept that, and that's 4337 compatible. But there is, again, going to need to be a mindset adopted to actually get that in the heads of DApp developers. It's actually the future, and that people can adopt that.
Yeah, so I think toolings and the libraries that developers use is essential for the adoption of something like 4337 or account abstraction in general. I mentioned earlier the difficulty or the difference that you need to treat off-chain signatures from an EOA and a smart contract wallet. A good example of how to fix that is, for example, what they did on zkSync. When you compile a smart contract on zkSync and it uses EC recover, which is this opcode that you use to verify signature, you have a warning that tells you, are you sure you know what you're doing? Because you could be breaking account abstraction compatibility. So I think that these kind of small things are actually a great way to educate developers. But I also think that at some point, developers shouldn't have to think about what kind of accounts they are building for. And so I think that's why tooling and standardization is important, because in the end, as a developer, you should just say, I want to verify an off-chain signature for an account, and my library should check, is it an EOA, then I will do it like this. Is it a smart contract wallet account, then I will do it like that. So I think we also need to reach a point with our libraries or tooling which actually abstract that complexity for developers, which is interesting. We use account abstraction to abstract the complexity of the protocol to users, but we should also use the library to abstract the complexity of these two types of account to developers. Yeah.
Yeah, I can add here this. Yeah, I agree. And this also means that we have new abstractions and developers are required to use those abstractions to not have a kind of common pitfalls with these issues. For example, OpenZeppelin Solidity library, they had signature checker abstraction, which is abstraction on top of checking signature of external owned address and smart contract. So yeah, I believe it's became more and more popular. I see it's being used among different projects. Like every month, every year, it's became more and more popular. So even the thing that some users are struggling from those implementations of some protocols which do not take this into account, this is also good because all these users, they come to those engineers, developers of those protocol, and they like report this. So in next versions of the same protocols, they will take this into account. So this is probably not the best way, but it is the way to solve this.
I mean, you mentioned, Julien, standardization. Like, I really want to build on that, like how we can bring more standardization in this ecosystem. Like, whose role is bringing this, you know? For everybody, yeah? I don't want to target you.
I mean, for me, it's all the role of everybody. I mean, I think that's the beauty of our ecosystem, is that anybody can contribute to standards. The drawback of that approach is that these standards take time, because like literally everybody can contribute. As for me, I think that's the beauty of this community, but it's also in a sense a curse. There's not one dictator that says that's how it should be and then things are moving forward. But I think we should cherish that, but that means these standardization efforts, they take a long time. But yes, I think every single developer should participate to those discussions, should read the IPs that touch their dApps or their interests, they should contribute, they should engage in the discussion. Because again, the goal of standard is for all of us to agree on something and move forward. But yes, the drawback of that, which we've witnessed a lot, is that it's a slow process.
Yeah, I think like even if you are not a developer, there's still things that you can do. So if we agree that this is the direction that we're heading, like having more flexible wallets, and like there's a funny little website called like EIP 1271. Yeah, it lists all the applications that are currently of 1271 compatible, and those that are not. And those that are not, like, are there similar to a shame list. So like people in the community will go to the Twitter and ask them, why are you not EIP 1271 compatible yet? So I think that is also one thing that even as if you're not a developer, you can do to push things forward.
Super cool. Yeah, I'm like, this is like a more general like thinking about, because you're speaking about, okay, the wallet need to be this and wallet need to be that. Like specific for in terms of role and functionality. I mean, what is the role of a wallet? What functionality a wallet need to have, the core functionality need to have in a wallet, and what actually the third party functionality need to build from the community? Like I think this is a pertinent question, because we get so many like also community features like requests, and we cannot satisfy everybody. I mean, yes, that's why we have snaps, right? But what are the things that we expect for a wallet, or what are the things that we can build internally, core functionality versus externally?
Sure. I mean, Francesco, you mentioned snaps. Like, this is a huge initiative for MetaMask in terms of what the wallet, what we're going to build internally and externally. We're turning the wallet into a platform, and so in a way, most of this could actually be developed externally. At the moment, we're tailoring some account snap APIs to ERC 4337, but if that changes, if a new technological craze appears, then snaps will also be applicable to that as well.
plainly the role of a wallet is to basically help users manage their identities and asset on chain. Right? A wallet in the end is just a client software that manages one or more accounts, and this account is the on-chain object that the users, which holds the user's state or identity and asset. But so it's kind of controversial, but in a sense, I think wallets should disappear, and I think we discussed that briefly yesterday. I think wallets are still in the way of users. I think wallets are surfacing the protocol to users, but we should try to make them as seamless and as transparent as possible, while at the same time enabling the user to have a safe experience and maintaining self-custody. So, and I think again, it's a complicated balance, exercise. But I do think that's what we should, really reach. Wallets should not really be visible to users because users come for application. They don't come for a wallet. They want to play a game which so happen that have a non-chain component, or they want to earn interest on, some of the funds they have, or they want to play with this funky JPEG. In the end, people come for application, and the wallet might be in the way. But of course, if you make the wallet disappear, there's the question of how to make sure the user is still in control and the user is still understanding the reach of their action. And so again, I think account abstraction is actually the technology that can help solve that balance.
Yeah, and just to build off that, it may sound crazy for wallet builders to say the wallet should disappear, right? But yeah, look, if you're onboarding onto a game and you just have some points or some gems of some kind, to then go and install a wallet, to then play a game, to then save your points on it, doesn't make a lot of sense. And we do need to get to that level where the onboarding into Web3 is as frictionless as possible.
So I'm not a wallet builder, and so I want to augment. As a user, what I think the wallet should do. From my perspective, non-custodiality is a must. Like if it's not non-custodial, it's not a crypto wallet. It's a bank. On top of that, what I expect from a wallet is control. I want to be in control. I want to be in the driver's seats, and I want the wallet to give me the ability to do anything I want on blockchain, display exactly what is going to happen, and give me a feeling that just this thing is going to happen. Like not create any unexpected side effects. And with the standards that we currently have on Ethereum in the EVM, like generally in the blockchain world, this is hard because you call a contract and it can call other contracts, and there can be things down the line which is hard to predict. Like you are just signing some message, like you're interacting with a dApp, and you don't want to trust this dApp because most dApps are hosted on websites, on ordinary websites like .com or something. They can be hacked. We have a lot of instances where, an employee of Cloudflare is compromised. They hack the DNS, they hijack the application, and so the application becomes malicious. And this happens a lot, it's lots of cases. So you want the user to know exactly what's going to happen, and what account abstraction can do. And I'm going to challenge you guys to maybe bring more example of interesting things, unexpected, unusual things that are possible with account abstraction. So one thing could be you insert post conditions into a call, something that the wallet cannot do, because the wallet can only display to you the pre-played, pre-simulated call of the transaction, but things on chain could be completely different. Imagine you submit a transaction to a mempool, you emulate it, it shows to you everything is fine, you're only going to spend $5. You submit a transaction to the mempool, the attacker submits another transaction, front runs you, and turns on the switch on this malicious smart contract that actually takes all of your money, which is something you could not have predicted. However, with account abstraction, if your wallet is smart, you can insert modules there, and you can say, at the end of my transaction, you submit it as call data. In the call, you specify, I'm only authorizing to spend 5 USDC or DAI or something. And then the final catch of your contract will check, did I actually spend only 5 or did I spend more? If you spend more, you revert, right? So you could do the safety checks for a lot of different things. So that's one example. Do you guys have more?
Yeah, I can jump on another example. First of all, what Alex described is using the idea of multi-call. The fact that with account abstraction, with the smart wallet, you can actually chain action, and so you can add a last action to the sequence of operation that your wallet does to do this check. Another thing we do at Argent is enabling the fact that you can add a second key on your account that needs to co-sign transaction. And you can imagine that you can give that key to a service, a fraud monitoring service that may contain a lot of rules. And so when you do a transaction, your wallet will actually send the raw data to that service. Because as humans, it's difficult to know exactly what will happen out of that transaction. As you mentioned, you can call a contract that calls another one. It's very complicated to know if this is a secure interaction or not. In the end, you just see a lot of hexadecimal numbers. But with that paradigm of account abstraction, you can send that raw information, that raw call data to that service, that fraud monitoring service, and that service will basically analyze the transaction. It can check is the target application, has it been flagged as a scam, or how much of your assets are you transferring? If you're sending 90% of your asset to an address that you've never interacted with, maybe this is suspicious. And so that service can then ask you with a 2FA challenge to just confirm your identity. And if you prove that you are you, it will co-sign the transaction and it goes through. So for the users, this is a very seamless flow, right? You basically want to do a transaction and you ask to, if it's suspicious, you are asked to confirm that you are you and the transaction can go through. So I think these ideas can really enable us to have a safe experience for sure.
And yeah, let me add. I believe here there is a little bit difference. If your account abstraction, it's like smart wallet, smart contract wallet, if it behaves with only calls and interacts with other smart contracts, it will be it could be protected in terms of what Alex said with the limited permits and approves. So if it makes approves for a specific amount for other contract to spend and then calls this contract, it will be able to get only those tokens and up to this amount which was pre-approved in the same transaction. And the infinite approves are bad, for sure. And account abstractions can solve this, and we will never have infinite approves in production. Again, we will have approve for each operation, and wallets should help to handle this. They should show that first operation will be approved of some specific token and specific amount, or several tokens and specific amounts, and then will be some specific operations. For sure, this thing could be broken only if the smart wallet will delegate calls to arbitrary actions, to like you are giving control of your account to arbitrary smart contract, and then almost nothing could help you to be protected from attack, which Alex described. You need to check probably each balance and each allowance, which actually impossible to check all the allowances to all the smart contracts. So, but it's also possible to do it kind of tricky way to check if those contracts of all untouched tokens are cold or hot after execution. It's a tricky way, but it could work. So, yeah, I believe for regular calls, like batch of actions, batch of non-delegate calls, it's possible to protect mostly with limited approves.
Yeah, I mean, being like informed, knowingly, owning the value, but also like in a transparent way. You kind of touched on that, but you need to, the user need to be in full, need to be awake exactly on what is going on, and that's why, like, for example, an example would be like snaps, how transparent, like there is you need to approve literally everything, and you're really in control of what's happening, how the snaps is actually speaking with the extension. But actually, we're speaking all the benefits. Like, there are, I think, a lot of misconception around this, and I want to open also to the audience. I want to hear your spicy questions. You need to be really spicy. But what actually, like, what we should not expect around the A? What we should not, what can we not do in terms of that? Like,
it's hard to expect that users who are already using DeFi, they will be happy to jump in to this account abstraction, because basically this would mean that they will pay a little bit more for transactions, because payment for the transaction will be charged in Solidity code, which will cost extra gas. Because what happens when you pay your gas with just native coin, it happens almost, it costs you nothing in terms of execution. You could only count it's like 21,000K as transaction overhead prepaid. So yeah, it's hard probably to convince existing users to pay more, but in a more convenient way. But this could be leveraged by gas costs. On layer 2s, gas costs are pretty good, and I believe they could be even cheaper. Maybe Alex can say how much cheaper they could be in long run.
Yeah, I wanted to use this opportunity to shamelessly shill zkSync and say that even on L2s, the account abstraction calls will be more expensive on most L2 chains because the bulk of the costs for L2s is coming from the call data, from the DA on Ethereum, the data availability. And if we use account abstraction, we will pass a lot more parameters to your call. You have to pass the different types of signature. If you're using biometric signature from your phones, which we mentioned before, it will be like larger. If you pass all these safety parameters, it will be larger. Like so, your transaction becomes much larger than what like a native transaction on Ethereum. And here is where zkSync comes into superior position because we are the only EVM compatible L2 which does not charge users for call data. So call data comes essentially for free. It's a part of computation. What we publish on Ethereum is the state deltas. We only publish the effects of the transactions, like what happened after this transaction was applied. And so you can input like very large, like you can do like hundreds of parameters in your call data. It will be processed inside L2. We can access some databases. We can call other contracts. This is all computationally very cheap because we have like very efficient proof systems by now. And at the end, you will only pay for this one transfer that you did or did not.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just come on. In terms of the limitations, it's very clear. Account abstraction is going to be an L2 chain thing. That's probably how most users are going to onboard there. ConsenSys, we've launched our own zk EVM. We're going to be experimenting with that, see if we can pass some of the cost savings on to our users there. But also, there's a mindset, I guess, changing to this new type of account. But also, because this isn't a protocol upgrade, the existing EOAs that a lot of people have money in today are not really going to be compatible. So that's definitely a limitation of the ERC 4337 approach until there's a protocol upgrade.
I think another challenge with something like ERC 4337 or account abstraction is the fact that if you go to different chains, you may have different addresses. Again, this is not an obligation. There are engineering solutions to make sure you can deploy always at the same address. But then again, instead of seeing that as a challenge, we can say, actually, maybe let's redefine what an address is. We are all using an address as a hexadecimal string. We could decide that we prepend these addresses, for example, with the chain ID on which you are. It's like saying my address is a certain street and not specifying the country or the city. I mean, I think as we evolve, we are realizing that some of the concepts that we use so far may not be relevant anymore or needs to be updated. But in the end, these are just engineering challenge. I think there's no question that account abstraction is the only way to move forward. And I truly believe that, and I've believed it for many years. So yes, there are, of course, with any technology, there are pros and cons, and you need to manage them intelligently. But in the end, these are just small engineering challenges that I have no doubt we will solve rapidly.
But I'm afraid this issue with addresses is probably more complex than we consider. Some people send assets to addresses on wrong chains, not intentionally. So having different addresses on different chains and not being able to reuse same addresses on different chains will always be an issue while we have the same address format on compatible, EVM compatible chains, for example. So I'm not sure what could be done here. Every day users lose a lot of funds sending them to wrong addresses. Some of them are possible to restore by deploying smart contracts to the addresses with the same nonsense, but this is not true for all the chains, and yeah.
I agree that this is a problem clearly that we are seeing today. But again, I think it comes back to the question of standardization, because the reason why people may send funds to the wrong chain is because their address is just an hexadecimal string and they put it in a wallet and they don't need to check the chain. But again, if we have standard, if we redefine what we consider an address and all wallets support that standard, then it will become impossible to just put an hexadecimal string and send funds. So I do think that these are, again, small UX problems that we can solve through standardization.
100%, and I think also education is a big part, the key, you know, like educating much their users, like giving instrument, more transparent instrument for developers, and yeah. How many of you guys do something with account abstraction today? Okay, sounds good. How many of you guys are not in 4337 Mafia? Is the question. Okay, cool. Well, let me sure, like, we will add you afterwards. Cool. So, any question from the audience? And just remember, you guys, it's very difficult to get everybody of this caliber here in this one room. So make sure that you guys send and yeah, give some spicy question around. Cool. I see one person there in the back. Cool. A lot of hands. We have 20 minutes, so let me make sure 1 minute answer max. Eh?
Hey, thanks you for
Istanbul,
the
right? No?
huh?
Okay.
Yeah, it's my yeah. And what you think for the will be upgrading for the next billion people to the onboarding process? What you need to do? We need to do crypto into the next billion people, like the EF's projection. Like the what we need to do onboard to like the groceries peoples or something's in the coffee or something is in the street. What we need to do? I'm asking that.
Yeah. So the question
is that clear?
user. Yeah, it's good. So the question is around user onboarding. Are we there yet? Are we able to onboard the next you know, grandmas, grandpas, barbers? You know.
I believe it's a question for layer 2s. Layer 1 did everything. It introduced layer 2s and offloaded the problem of scaling to layer 2.
Don't think we're ready yet to onboard 1 billion people, or even like 1 million maybe. There are a few things that L2s need to solve additionally. Like ZK proofs have solved computation to arbitrary degree. We can like process millions of transactions per second now in parallel. But we still need to solve the data availability problem, and we're on the way there. But it's not quite there yet. It will be solved probably closer to the end of this year.
Yeah, and this is going to be an iterative process, right? We're talking about this now. ERC 4337 was only live a couple of months ago. 1 billion people, not tomorrow, right? But yeah, let's hope a bit of a longer time frame.
Yeah, I think in order to acquire like next billion users into the ecosystem, I think there's a lot to do. And currently, the ecosystem is designed for developers, right, if I may say, and it's not designed for like general public users. And the entire like user experience is just too complex for most users. So like in order to actually get them on board, you have to redesign. And like what account abstraction brings to the table is it brings the flexibility of like verification, execution, gas fee payment, so you can potentially build an UX that is similar to current like Web 2 products, and that is what these people are familiar with.
I also think something that is probably lacking is real use case for real people. And again, I think the technological change that we are seeing now, for example, with layer 2s that can scale, I think we will see more interesting use cases that appeal to normal users. A bit the same way that, you know, internet bandwidth, when it was limited, there's a lot of stuff that people didn't even think could be possible. And if you improve the technology and suddenly you enable the technology to do more stuff, there will be some smart creative builders that will come with new ideas and build these ideas. And so I think up to now, the underlying technology was limited and would have never supported 1 billion users. But I think with scaling solutions like zkSync and some others, we have reached that point where we can now actually do much more stuff. And so I do believe that us as an ecosystem, we should also think of, you know, what new things can we do to actually solve the problems of a broader set of users. And I think that's one of the important missing pieces as well.
Cool. Other questions? I think, yeah.
Hey, hi. This is Haq from Banana SDK. I'm building an account abstraction infrastructure focused on SecP 256 R1 curves. So yeah, similar to Argent. I have a question. to Julien. So you mentioned that there is a world where a user would not even know that they are interacting with a wallet. It's at the back end. So what happens if the user wants to use the same wallet on a different application? How does he know it's the same wallet? Or I know it's a complex problem to solve, but like, where do you see a solution? What kind of solution could it really look like?
That's a good question. I see that it might be a bit controversial, but the same way that you can log in, for example, with Google to many applications, I think at some point we'll see something similar. So for example, at Argent, we've just released a product called Web Wallet, which seems really like email and password login. But then again, two things that are extremely important for us is self-custody, of course, but it's also, as you mentioned, the ability to port that identity and that wallet to other applications. But I think it will just come today. I still think it's not a great experience, but when you go to an app, it says connect and you see the different possibilities. And so I think this type of wallet will simply be supported on more applications. I think it will be one kind of login, like today on Web 2, you may have Google, Facebook, and so on. But I think that's how we'll actually enable users to go from one app to another. But again, the beauty of Web 3 is that there's no vendor lock-in. So users can always choose to actually keep their identity and maybe use a different form factor to interact with it. But I do feel that this is something that is coming, yes.
Well, I see one question there, and then we go on the other side that I feel we are only taking a question there.
We're always talking about like making the account abstraction always goes around the like first step of the user onboarding, like easy logins, like less gas fees, or the paying gas fees with like every kind of token and stuff. And when we do that, when we accomplish that, well, what will be the next phase of it? Like it will be like payments. What can the kind of developments will happen after we finish all kind of like user onboarding of the first step? Like, what will be the next steps on your visions?
Maybe I can just give a quick example, which I think is interesting, is the idea of session keys. I don't know if you've heard of it, but today, for example, if you want to play an on-chain game, you need to make a lot of transactions. Today, every time you click on a button, basically you have your wallet popping up and you need to confirm that operation. The idea of session keys, which is only doable with account abstraction, is that you can actually authorize a dApp to make transaction on your account. So when you log into the dApp, the dApp will generate a key locally and ask you to authorize that key to do something under a certain condition. So the dApp will say, I want to be able to call your account for 20 minutes. I will only call that method on that contract, and I will only spend 10 DAI. You can say, OK, I'm agreeing to do that. After that point, that's it. You no longer see a wallet. You can play your game, you click on button, and the dApp will directly send transaction to your account. So again, this is, I think, beyond onboarding. When you have onboarding, you can start actually having, again, a seamless experience where you don't see the wallet. But you have the guarantee that you are still secure because you've chosen exactly what the dApp could do. So I think these are just some of the ideas. As you mentioned, there's onboarding, there's the stuff that you can do after. But I think, account abstraction is complete. It changes the paradigm. And so I think it will unlock a lot of new possibilities. These are just some of the examples that we are thinking about today, but I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of new ideas coming soon.
Yeah, I'll just add on that. I mean, solving the onboarding and the recoverability is going to take a bit of time. But look, this is going to be a paradigm shift in terms of Web 3, but users today are very familiar with Web 2-like experiences. This was said before. And account abstraction is going to start to allow us to do that. And there's going to be some changes, but one of the examples I like to use as well is, say, batching transactions, right? You could be on OpenSea, choose a number of different NFTs you want to buy, add them to a shopping cart, buy them all together. That's something we're very familiar with if we go on Amazon. It's pretty difficult to do right now, but with account abstraction, that could be possible.
Cool. Let's get a question here on this side. Anybody want to ask? Nobody's too tired. No questions? Cool. Oh, I see a question there. Oh no, let's get a question there first. We do this and then we do on the other side.
Basically, can this make possible prepaid wallet for onboarding directly to moms and pops?
Yeah, I mean, prepaid wallets is a really interesting idea, actually.
Right. Basically, the example that Coinbase did just with the cafe. right? They basically had the setup with the cafe that they basically kind of prepay you. I mean, they just sell you their wallet, right? But I'm just asking, if this is making possible prepaid wallet for just onboarding everyone, right? Because we're saying like onboarding users, right? So it's a user-centric feature, but if they're just constrained by just Web3 and what they can do on DeFi or NFT or gaming, I mean, we're only talking about tiny portion of people, right? We're so few millions just using Web3, right?
Yeah, I don't think I heard some of the words. I do apologize, but talking about prepaid wallets, this is talking about earlier about some off-chain counterfactual delegation sample. Imagine if at Christmas I wanted to give an NFT to one of my parents, for example, right? And when we solve the onboarding problem, for example, I could prepay that with some gas, and then when they were eventually, they wouldn't necessarily even think they were minting said NFT, right? But when they did eventually, that gas could then come from my account, which would then incredibly improve the onboarding mechanism. Yeah.
Cool, I see a question right down here. So Cynthia, you don't need to run.
So my question is for each of you. What do you personally feel is the most compelling use case that 4337 will enable you to build?
One phrase answer. Oh, repeat. One thing that you. What is one use case, the most important use case that you think as with a
use case of account abstraction?
Yes.
Okay. I'll try to answer probably. So I believe following the account abstraction adoption, we will see dApps innovation. So there is a way for dApps to make not one action anymore from wallet address, but multiple actions. They can be batched, they can be depending, they even can have a callback. And yeah, when transient storage will be included in the next hard fork, it will also include to have kind of dynamic callbacks and handle them dynamically. Like we could put some kind of expecting them in transient storage and can handle them differently. So in some cases, we would be even able to save gas, for example, by interacting with some smart contracts which we were not previously to deal with from EOA. Like even swapping on Uniswap V2, V3, V4, it was almost like never possible from EOA address because it requires more than one call or it requires to respond to callback. But with account abstraction, we will be able to do this. Yeah.
For me, the use case, I was just thinking about it and about what was just said before in the previous question. I realized that I can summarize it more generically as replacing banks, going bankless, because you need to solve the onboarding problem, like that's the base. You need to solve the security problem, and then you want to solve this control problem, where like you have fine-tuned control. And I just thought about what you said about the paying gas for your parents to mint an NFT. You could actually authorize some other accounts to just give them an allowance. You can give your children an allowance. So you can basically do whatever banks applications now allow you. You can say like, I want to issue this credit card, which has only like $100 per day spending limit, and I'm going to give it to you, and like someone else can be spending my money from my account, doing it there. Or even like subscriptions, they require account abstraction, so that like you can say like I'm going to authorize this account to book like every month like 20 euros from me. Like all the services that are currently being done on banks are only possible in a user-friendly way with account abstraction, and that's for me the use case.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it, replacing banks, right? But think of a bank, if I forget my internet banking password, I can ring up the bank, I can get back into my bank account. So for me, the key use case account abstraction is going to bring is, of course, that recoverability element. I think that's going to be huge.
Okay. So for me, it's not exactly one use case, but account abstraction or ERC-437 enables, like, it will change the way you perceive accounts. Like currently, we treat these accounts more like disposable. Like it's just a private key, and if something happens to this private key, I have to dispose it, and all the transaction history, all the soulbound tokens I have collected in this account will basically disappear. And with that account abstraction, you can easily rotate the keys out. So this identity will stick with you forever. And we can add even more like standardization. So you can even move from one wallet provider to another. And this identity is always yours.
Personally, I like what Alex said, because in what he described, he never talked about the blockchain. He's actually describing an application. Never did you mention the protocol, gas fees. So for me, that's exactly what account abstraction will do, is make the wallet invisible so that we can focus on application. And Alex described a great application, I think. So for me, that's really it. I think account abstraction will make the wallet invisible and make the protocol invisible to users. And that's what matters.
We're almost finished. Even the Wi-Fi is almost finished. Cool. Really last question here that we are on time.
Hello? Cool. So, hi all, my name is Oscar, I'm from Alchemy. So this event was called Beyond 4337. So one thing I want to ask each of you, and we can have a little fun with this, if you had command over all of the developers in the space, what would be the next step for you to have everyone work on beyond 4337 to onboard the next billion users?
I'd love everyone to be able to snap. Honestly, that's my answer. We're turning the wallet into a platform. You can create your own module if you have an idea in terms of how to improve the wallet. The APIs are there. If they're not already, come and speak to me afterwards. We want to support you, and we want to see your functionality inside MetaMask.
I can add, next billion of users should come on their own when they will see how amazing is our DeFi and account abstractions.
I think for me, beyond 4337 is actually making it native. As I mentioned, I think we should all have native account abstraction. So if you all agree that 4337 is great, is there to stay, we should focus on the next step, which is actually bringing it to the protocol level.
For me, it's more like modular wallet logic. So yeah, so once we have added this extendability to our wallets, like we can work on modules, and like it becomes like a marketplace that like everyone can build a piece of verification logic or execution logic, and that's like even like creates better network effect for all the developers.
And I'm again gonna shamelessly shill zkSync, but in a different way. And I will invite everyone to come join us, because we're actively hiring and help us build the protocol layer with native account abstraction for the next 1 billion users.
Cool, awesome. I think we're on time. I wish we had actually more time. This was great. And yeah, we're coming back in 15 minutes. You find every panelist here. Round of applause.
Thank you.